for this feature. Hey, and I gotta do this. I can do that though. I think they do. I think we tried that once. Remember? Are they? Wait a minute. I can't be wearing these in public though.
Where's Maria Mitchell at?
They're right here.
See if we can get started here. Tell her I'm gonna call roll if they come.
You're not 50 though.
Okay, call the roll, please.
Mayor Bain.
I'm here.
Vice Mayor Zapata.
Here.
Councilman Best.
Present.
Councilwoman Mitchell.
Yes, here.
Councilman Petralanda.
Please stand for
Here.
invocation. We have Deacon Javier Inda here to say the invocation. Right there.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Dear wise and loving Father, first let me say thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for the ability to be involved in Jesus' work and for the honor for bearing appropriate responsibilities. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. I pray for all city officials and in particular for Sister Sambo Council. I asking that you would be graciously grant them wisdom to govern, a sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, confident in what is good and fitting, the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreements, personal peace in their life and joy in their task. O God of wisdom and truth, as this city council gathers to deliberate and decide on matters so important to the present and future well-being of our community, bless and guide its members through the grace of your Spirit. Help them each to set aside petty concerns that together they might best serve the common good of Miami Springs residents in honors and honor the purpose on which they were elected. In your name we pray, through our Lord Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you, and the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
Okay, we have stated the Pledge of Allegiance. Right hand over your chest. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, we have some special guests that we're going to announce to come up here, but first I want to recognize one of our former council persons in the audience here tonight, and that's Council Rosie Buckner. She come to say hi. I guess she, being retired, she has time to do this, and this is something I came to. I don't know about it. All right, Bob, we're gonna do that. We're gonna do this a little different tonight. Bob's gonna help me, and we're gonna introduce the All-Dade County players that made All-Dade County from Miami Springs, and one other one that's coming in. Go ahead.
Okay.
Just yeah, the first one for the first four.
Okay. The certificate of recognition presented to Gabby Semino, Miami Springs Senior High, for being nominated to the Miami Herald first team All-Dade Conference. Secondly, this is a certificate of recognition presented to Elizabeth Vizcaino, Miami Springs Vizcaino, Miami Springs Senior High. She's the Miami Springs first team All-Day for women's soccer.
I know you, right?
Next is a certificate of recognition presented to Mary Mitnick, Miami Springs Senior High, for being named to the Miami Springs first team All-Dade women's softball. Next one we have is a certificate of recognition presented to Carlos Ray, number 34. Miami Springs Senior High School. Presenting Miami Springs first team All-Day for men's baseball. And finally, we have a certificate of recognition presented to Angela Moon. Angela Moon, Miami Springs Senior High. Being named to the 2018 Female Soccer Athlete of the Year by Dade Scholastic Athletic Foundation. Ms. Moon, a Miami Springs Senior High School student, is recognized for combining sports participation in volleyball, soccer, and tennis, and the ability to maintain high academic standing. Congratulations.
And we'll take a nice picture. Come closer. There you go. I did it this way so that everybody could see that. Any other parents want to take a picture?
Did you leave, Billy?
We'll have to talk about all them cars in your yard if you keep talking like that. Don't give me away. Don't give me away, okay? Well, yeah, I just want to say, all right, let me know what grade and what your aspirations are.
10th grade, and my aspiration is to be a Major League Baseball.
I'm in 10th grade, going to be a junior, and I'd like to play college soccer.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sophomore, and I want to be a student athlete at a college summer.
I just graduated high school, and I'm going to FSU, and I'm majoring in health studies in their College of Medicine.
So the guy over here that popped off, this is his daughter who lives right down the block from me, you know, and
It popped off.
used to come and get her candy from me and everything, and all of a sudden he said that about me. You know that? But I want to congratulate all of them, and Miss Moon, let me ask you, do you have any time for yourself other than do you have any social life?
I try.
You try? Is there anything about your mother that doesn't allow you to have a social life? Jennifer Moon, she's, the dad, he's not here, so we could talk about him then, right? Anyway, congratulations, and they need another applause. Thank you very much.
Did you coach?
That's nice.
Very nice.
Thanks, Bobby.
Sir.
Thank you, Councilman Best. Okay, we go on to, well, where's the, we don't have the list on here for open forum. It's here? Mine don't say it. Do you see it where it says open forum?
Number 5.
Oh, huh?
Number 5.
Oh, there it is. Okay, we got Christina Nova. You have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Clerk, City Manager.
There you go.
I'm just standing here as a concerned citizen for this, basically the amount of accidents that are occurring at the corner of my house, which is Oakwood Drive and East Drive. Just in the last month, there have been 3 accidents. One of them, an overturned vehicle, and I would say it's basically, the reason is the amount of the speed of the vehicles traveling on East Drive and the amount of vehicles that are on Oakwood and East Drive. The traffic really increased in that area after the charter school opened, but it's been basically the last 3-4 years that East Drive traffic has increased so much, and it's the cut-through traffic to Hialeah. Just today, I've been working in my yard, and while I was out there for like 3 hours, 4 hours, 4 tractor trucks, which I believe are not supposed to be cutting through, just went through. Mastec truck was 2 of them, one going north, one going south. Another one was that food place.
Cisco's?
No,
Cheney Brothers?
It's okay, you don't need.
it's one of those
Okay.
food places
Shop.
that is just a delivery to a supermarket. And definitely there are not supermarkets on East Drive.
Right.
And people do not respect the traffic signal, which is a stop sign on Oakwood. I've been in contact with Chief Guzman. In fact, I contacted Erica, City Clerk Erica Gonzalez today via email because I had tried to reach her on the phone and I wasn't able to. And I actually forwarded an email today to Councilwoman Maria Puentes Mitchell, because I know that one of her concerns is the traffic control in Miami Springs. And I know Chief Guzman has told me that they did a study. Miami-Dade County would approve like a traffic circle, but I had to stand here and request the council to start looking into it.
Okay.
So I appreciate
Thank you.
whatever you guys can do for us.
You got it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. You want to wait for the? You want to wait for the item? You want to go now, or you want to wait? Okay. Okay, that concludes the open forum. We go to 6A, May 29th regular council minutes.
Through the chair, motion to move the.
Call the vote.
Vice Mayor Zapata?
Yes.
Councilman Best?
Aye.
Councilman Mitchell?
Yes.
Councilman Pedro-Alonso?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes, we're going to go 10A. This is an update on the boat ramp cost and estimate.
Yes, Mayor and Council. During the April 23rd, 2018 council meeting at the request of Councilwoman Mitchell, we discussed the idea of potentially reopening the current Canal Bank ramp located on North Royal Poinciana across from the dog park and catwalk to provide accessibility to recreational users to launch non-motorized boats such as kayaks, paddleboards, and canoes into the canal. Council agreed to allow access as long as proper signage with the rules of ramp usage were posted and that the necessary permits with South Florida Water Management District were applied for. As a follow-up to this discussion, staff reached out to Mr. Armando Villaboy, regional representative of the South Florida Water Management District, and he has confirmed that the city's letter of maintenance filed with the district is current and allows us to continue with any projects planned for the boat ramp. Furthermore, the ramp and the surrounding area will need to have some necessary improvements in order to allow access for this recreational use. Public Works has obtained a preliminary cost of approximately $12,000 to overlay the current ramp with asphalt, reinforce and add to the existing launch ramp pad with riprap bags, and pour a concrete slab similar to the one on Ludlam for a tiki hut or other canopy structure. Additional costs would be for the signage, adding a tiki hut or canopy and a picnic bench, bringing the total cost of this project to over $15,000. Staff currently requests direction from council on whether or not to continue with this project. If so, the funds will have to be come from designated fund balance. As a further note to the $15,000, we're looking, in order to reduce the cost and keep it at 12, instead of building a tiki hut, we're thinking of moving one of the shelters that's currently behind the senior center by the tot lot, which are going to be removed eventually anyway due to the construction of the new senior center, and moving one of those shelters to that area. And so the only cost involved, if we do that, will be the $12,000 for the actual ramp work. I have Lazaro Garaboa here from Public Works. He's the one that's spearheading the project. If you have any questions about the work and the type of work being done for the $12,000.
Something happened here. Okay, well, I think you're looking for direction, so
Yes.
my thought is that I would pursue the cost and everything like that, and I think that we should go ahead and think about funding it in the next budget, unless up here think it's that but I think it should be funded for the next budget, and we'll put it in the budget to do it if the
Through-
council wants to do that.
Yeah, through the chair, if I might, Mr. Alonso, how much money do we have in the designated fund balance at the moment?
Well, we haven't designated any funds for this. It would have to come from fund balance
Okay.
right now. We never actually really designated any fund balance for this project.
Are we still over on what we have designated for special events, with the propensity that there probably won't be another one until we enter into the
I
budget
mean, in
session?
the council's budget for special, yeah.
That's exhausted.
No.
Oh,
You
there
have
is
some
money
funds
there.
available there, yeah.
Approximately?
8 to 9,000.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have a couple of questions. I guess it's more to, maybe you can help me out, the liability of allowing this to happen. In fact, does the police have the infrastructure if something happens, that they call them, do they need to go on the boat and go out to help somebody? I mean, those kind of things, have we looked into these things before we continue with this?
We haven't fully vetted all the issues for liability, although there are plenty of activities that are technically considered hazardous activities that are recognized under Florida law, have different standards for liability for the city, even though, as it is, for providing a facility, we have sovereign immunity, and so long as it's not negligently maintained and accidents happen, they're going to be on their own. But it's something that we can look at, and we can talk to the chief about how we can go about enforcing issues there on the water.
Okay, I'd like to echo the mayor's suggestion that we can hold off until the next budget and go ahead and allocate the money for, if everything goes accordingly to plan, maybe we can allocate it then.
Mayor, if I may. First of all, thank you for your support, Mayor. I know you more than anyone are the true outdoorsman and appreciate
It'll
the
be
importance.
9 years since I tried to do this.
I know. Well, you know what? Eventually, the impossible takes a little longer. But I think this is a really important project. The amount is a pittance compared to what we're gaining. First of all, we call ourselves a river city. This will truly allow us to enjoy, appreciate, promote the reality that we live on a river city, that we are a river city, that the river, the Miami Canal that we call the Miami Canal, is actually the Miami River, like I've mentioned before, that to the east goes into our amazing Biscayne Bay, and if we follow it to the northwest, it goes into the Everglades. So it's an amazing natural resource that we have there. And allowing, or encouraging, because it's not even allowing, because the South Florida Water Management District, when I approached them to ask them about the accessibility of this waterway, said that they consider it a recreational waterway. It's already a recreational waterway. There's nothing limiting right now anyone hand launching from their homes or from anywhere along the banks, hand launching a canoe, a kayak, paddleboard, or anything. The only thing we're requesting here is a permit from them to beautify the existing boat ramp area that was closed off. It was closed to not allow vehicles to put trailers into the waterway because the slope of the ramp is very steep.
That's what it is now, but there's a long story behind all of that.
Okay. But what I want to address is that as far as liability or usage, that's already in existence. We're already allowed to use that. Any resident here can use that as a waterway. So all we're doing is requesting from, what we've requested from South Florida Water Management is the ability to beautify the area and to make it consistent with other areas along the Ludlam Canal and other areas of the city that we want to promote outdoorsmanship, enjoyment of our natural resources, encouraging a family who has a canoe or a kayak, instead of having to load it on the top of their minivan and drive to Alita or Matheson Hammock to spend some hours on the water, that they can actually do it here in our community. And I think the amount of this is just surprisingly insignificant compared to what our city has to gain from adding this to the opportunities, the recreational opportunities for our residents.
Do you have anything?
No? Through the chair, if I might. A question directed to the chief. Do we not have a marine arm of our department, so to speak?
Oh, we have a boat.
well, sir, that's a start.
No, speaking seriously, if we are going to pursue something like this, we'd have to have training for officers to be able to do
other things than just right up and down in the John boat. And that also involves, when it comes to accreditation, there are certain standards that we have to adhere to, which it's kind of complex. It's not just something we can snap our fingers and designate. We have a Marine Patrol.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I know that you want to go ahead and pursue this, but why don't we consensus on this? Let them come up with, give them till next council meeting and come up with a plan on one if you wanted to fund it for this budget. 2, if the chief can get anything set up for it, and see, and we'll reevaluate it the next time around with more information on an exact number and see if we can come up with an answer at that particular time.
I'd
so
like
that
to,
we're not just keep it moving forward.
I'd like to applaud Councilman Mitchell's efforts in making this happen. It goes hand in hand with the bicycle pass that we've been putting up over the past few years, as well as outdoor activities, which should be emphasized here in the Springs, in my view, and get people off the internet and out in the fresh air. So that's my thought.
And Mayor, if I may, could I ask our city attorney for input?
I just wanted to say that I wanted to relay the fact that I knew that the public space challenge solicitation that you put in for that, that item is being reviewed extensively into the final rounds. So it's possible that by the next meeting, you'll have a disposition for the Maya Foundation that could potentially grant some money towards that.
Okay. So I think
Even
we move it to the next meeting
Okay.
and have more information,
Wonderful.
maybe funding.
Thank you.
Maybe funding for it. Okay. All right, now we go on to first reading of an ordinance.
Mayor and Council, before we get into this, as you know, these items are traveling together. So what we can do is read them separately, have a single discussion, and incorporate that discussion effectively into both items, 2 public hearings. But we can incorporate, we can just have one big discussion on the item, because eventually there's no change on one item and there's changes on the second item. And then also incorporate into the record all the minutes and conversation from the previous meeting. So
Mayor,
I'll go ahead and read the...
Could I ask something first before you read that? I was going to ask for the council to consider deferring this to the next meeting. This is, I think it's a wonderful opportunity. We have a wonderful opportunity to make our business district something that is going to be draw pedestrians and just promote vitality and enhance it greatly. But I feel that a lot of residents have not had time to hear about it, to voice their opinions. I've gotten a lot of calls this last week since our last meeting, and I was out of town, but I got a lot of calls from people who just wanted to provide their input. And I would like to suggest that the council consider delaying this to our next meeting for the both ordinances, since they can't be. I was asking our city attorney before the meeting if we could just vote for the one to make the changes and then vote for the second one the next meeting, and he suggests that we do them together.
They should travel together,
Okay.
because the zoning text change is the implementation regulation for the land use change. The only thing I would say is that this is a first reading. There will be a second reading where input can be provided between first and second. And this was just going to incorporate, for first reading, all the changes that the council made at the special meeting. But that's up to the council to decide if you'd like to defer it.
I still think that it's a significant enough issue that allowing residents enough time to provide us input before the first vote will help move the second vote along considerably.
I would argue that there are certainly folks here tonight that intend to speak to this issue, and that should be more than satisfactory for us to move forward with it.
I could say that I had phone calls about this item.
So have I.
And I could say that, quite a few phone calls, quite a few positive phone calls. I think the crowd's here for this item, and I don't see why we shouldn't go forward. We did our due diligence and did our work on the 4th. Thought we'd come up with the help of residents that came up and spoke. Thought we'd come up with some good ideas to fix it so that we can have a nice first reading, and there's people signed up to speak on this, and it's a public hearing, so I'll call anybody else that wants to speak on it. that wants to. So I think we should move forward.
I agree with that. I think that people here tonight would be disappointed if we didn't, have these read and voted upon. That's why they're here. They want to know more about it, and it's an opportunity for them to express, their concerns. So I'm glad that they're all here to do that.
Can we allow them to speak and
Of
still
course we're
defer
allowing
it?
them to speak.
No, and I'm saying and still defer it to the next meeting. Is that possible?
I'm ready to, I think we should
That's
move
a good
forward.
point.
I mean,
All
do you want to put a vote for it, or?
It's a first reading.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
feel
really,
to
it can
move-
be reversed in the second reading. I mean, it could be.
Okay. You? Move forward?
First reading.
First reading? Okay, let's go.
All right, so I'll go ahead and read the titles, the captions of both ordinances. First, the land use. This is an ordinance of the City of Miami Springs, Florida, amending chapter, excuse me, I'm sorry. I have the wrong one. Approving an amendment to the text of the City of Miami Springs Comprehensive Plan future land use element for a portion of the Central Business District by creating the Miami Springs Gateway Overlay District, providing for enhanced building requirements, approving a small-scale amendment to the city's future land use map in furtherance hereof, providing for implementation, providing for incorporation into the comp plan, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date. The second ordinance, an ordinance of the City of Miami Springs, Florida, amending Chapter 150 of the city's Code of Ordinances by creating Section 150.070.1 Miami Springs Overlay Gateway District, providing for regulations consistent with the City of Miami Springs comp plan, providing for implementation, providing for incorporation into the code, and providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing for an effective date. Mayor and Council, just for the benefit of everyone here, I know that we had the conversation of how we got here, but perhaps we should, and even though it's incorporated for the record, we should perhaps have the discussion again just for way of background, if that's all right. So we'll do our same song and dance. I'll just, again, start, and then William could take over on the memo, that by saying the way this was presented to council at the special meeting was unlike the way that other items have been in the past. That is, usually the council would receive a memorandum that alluded to or talked generally about a situation which left most often more questions than answers and allowed for a lot of things to be read into a situation that may not have been available. So what was done instead was working the manager's office, the planner's office, and our office. We prepared a full legislative packet which was presented to you at that special meeting. That included, excuse me, the memorandum that's before you again, two fully drafted ordinances for further revision, included a map, and then some excerpts from the Dover Coal Study, which is from 2001, all to give you as much information as possible. So, William, you want to go ahead and just read the portion of the memo?
Yeah. As was briefly discussed at the May 29th regular council meeting, staff for some time has been looking at ways to enhance the entrance into Miami Springs in the downtown area, which we have come to call the Gateway. For years, past councils, residents, and commercial property owners have expressed a need to enhance the beauty and look of the Gateway. Members of the current city council have expressed this desire as well. The area has seen some recent activity with the sale of certain properties like the Starbucks property and the photography studio property, the latter of which is under construction and will soon host the Apple Dental building, as well as the placement for sale of the theater property. Other than the dental office building, the area has not experienced any meaningful change. While staff began to focus on this area last year, our attention was diverted from time to time by a variety of issues, including Hurricane Irma, the current fiscal year budget, and other operational issues. At the end of March of this year, I received a letter from Mariana Santana, the widow of the late Carlos Santana, which I have included with this memo as attachment A. As you will read in the letter, Mrs. Santana generally expresses frustration at her repeated failed attempts to sell the theater property, citing the reservations of numerous brokers and interested parties about buying the property, given the onerous property regulations in the downtown area. This letter caused staff to take the Gateway from the back burner and make it a pending concern. For the past 2 months, the city planner, city attorney, and my office have discussed, researched, and analyzed ways to foster enhancements of the Gateway that, number one, will improve the area to better reflect the character and quality of life in the city. Number two, better identifies the city of Miami Springs and its history. Number three, enhances the area character and authenticity of a principal entrance of the city. Number four, fosters increased business and pedestrian activities for the residents, and number 5, help spur economic development and an expanded commercial tax base. It can hardly be argued that Gateway is in need of improvement in the area of building design, landscaping, signage, streetscape, gateway features, and traffic calming. Regrettably, the city finds itself in a difficult position to bring about most of the desired changes. Some of the improvements of the area could be accomplished as city capital improvements, but that capital outlay will be costly and exceeds the funds the city has available for infrastructure improvements. Additionally, most of the desired changes involve private property, requiring the buy-in of private property owners. The current regulations in the area have generally failed to produce the type of gateway that is currently desired. In keeping with the historical approach that the city has taken, we began to consider policy changes that could bring about the changes that are generally desired of the gateway. In turn, we turned to some of the historical information prepared for the city, which included the Dover Call report from 2001. You will find applicable excerpts of it included with this memo as attachment B. The report correctly identified the gateway as a scenic entrance into the city and downtown area. The bridges, layout, and circle provide a natural place for drivers to have the opportunity to become aware of what the area has to offer as opposed to a straight road. If there was more to look at, while we all agree that downtown Miami Springs is a beautifully planned area, the report identified conditions that are still present today, such as buildings that lack architectural detail, an entrance without a strong sense of place, a unique character, untapped amenities for public enjoyment. Any policy that would work to improve the area would need to address these areas. I will leave the other sections for Chris and Dan and just read the conclusion. We believe that the Gateway Overlay District will begin to solve the concerns that have been raised and continue to be raised about the unsightly conditions in parts of the Gateway. The design elements will tie the buildings together. The flexibility and intensity in parking will encourage property owners to improve their properties, and the creative excellence standards will cause private property owners to bring about the features that are missing in our Gateway. The Gateway Overlay District will help accomplish these goals, objectives, and policies in the comp plan for the Central Business District of further improving our suburban downtown into a thriving area with business amenities for residents, while also making our Gateway a quintessential part of the Miami Springs identity. Staff requests that Council's consideration of the recommended policies as well as the feedback with the goal of bringing forward ordinance for public hearings in June.
Mayor and Council, as I explained before during the special meeting, the reason that there are 2 ordinances is because you have to take 2 steps in order to get this done. We have the Central Business District identified in our comprehensive plan, as well as an element called the Future Land Use Map. The proposed policy is to create exactly what the name says, an overlay. So an area within the Central Business District that has somewhat special regulations that enhance or really accentuate certain elements of the Central Business District. That's step 1. And step 2 is, as I mentioned, the second ordinance, changing the text of the zoning code, which are effectively your implementing regulations. Without the implementing regulations, you simply have a land use category that cannot be expressed and could actually lead to litigation. So, as I mentioned, also there's no change in the ordinance for the first one, creating the land use overlay district. The purpose of the Miami Springs Gateway Overlay District, located within the Central Business District, for the area abutting and or adjacent to the incoming vehicular bridges to and from the city of Hialeah, as identified in the city's future land use map, is to facilitate placemaking by enhancing neighborhood character and authenticity through participatory design and identifying projects such as architecturally significant buildings, entrance features, art in public places, improved landscaping, signage, traffic calming features, and promotion of the city's history. The foregoing will further the goals, objectives, and policies of the Central Business District, which are to foster a suburban downtown that satisfy the business, service, dining, and entertainment needs of the community's residents, as further detailed in the city's comp plan. So effectively, that is the language that goes into the comp plan, and that's effectively creates the land use category, and we have a map for that. The zoning text is what we had the most discussion at during the last council meeting. I want to stress again that these are all things that effectively the city is either going to be requiring of future projects or asking property owners to participate in. So, and what I'll do is I'll run through it again, and where we've made changes from the special meeting discussion to now, I'll identify that, and also I should have relayed the individual that wanted to bring that up if there wasn't consensus for it, meaning that more than one person brought it up. So, other than identifying the area, the focus of this really are the design standards. That is, that one of the issues that William brought up is the fact that there's no unifying architectural design or structure to the downtown gateway area, and so these things, first and foremost, impose some of those things. In keeping with the Central Business District, the maximum height shall be no more than 40 feet and no more than 3 stories, although rooftop activation, that is no vertical construction, but if somebody wanted to put a rooftop area to gather up there, for example, with some umbrellas, you could technically do that. Bear in mind that this is also further limited by the charter that says any building that contains more than one residential dwelling unit shall not exceed 3 stories or 40 feet. So that is to say, and to the extent that any building in this area would have residential, no matter what the FAR is, it could not exceed 3 stories, or it would require a referendum to change. So new to this ordinance is Section 2, the setbacks. We had some feedback from council on both the first floor and the rear yard. So I know Councilwoman Mitchell specifically and Councilwoman Zapata talked about the first. We'll say we identified 5 feet of the property from the property line as a way to increase your sidewalk areas. I know that it was one of the residents, Rogelio Madden, that came out and talked about eliminating the rear yard setback, and so effectively sort of offsetting that. So the setbacks in the Central Business District shall remain the same for the gateway, except for these 2 changes, which is simply we're asking the properties, to the extent that they're knocked down. I mean, we anticipate buildings being refurbished, like the dental building that's there. But if you happen to knock down a building, you recess it 5 feet, and then also that rear yard setback that's currently required, which you can't really identify a purpose for it other than a couple parking spaces or perhaps for garbage, that gets eliminated, and that's how we'll sort of make up that difference of putting it on the front. Number 3, uses. Uses in the CBD, as anticipated, will remain absolutely the same as in the Gateway District. The only change, and this is based on council's feedback led by Vice Mayor Zapata, is that hotels shall be specifically prohibited. As I mentioned before, our zoning code's a little tricky because it's neither a permissive code nor a restrictive code, and that's because we have uses that are permitted, uses that are prohibited, and then nothing in the middle. And so we're expressly saying that hotels in the gateway are not permitted. The architectural design was something that we had included before. As before, new construction or renovation shall exhibit elements of Pueblo or Mission revival. And examples of these shall be available through the Office of the City Planner. Again, this is not necessarily that a building has to look exactly like the Curtis Mansion or other buildings within the city, but exhibit elements of it, similar to the way that the Stadnik building and Carlos Santana's buildings have elements that look like they belong in the same period. In keeping with some of the feedback that was council had given, there was consensus for it, was simply to eliminate one of the what we call creative excellence elements of activating pedestrian activity and making it a requirement. So now that entire element was added in 4B, so that property shall be designed in such a manner as to create, improve, or connect pedestrian amenities in the subject property and surrounding areas, giving specific consideration to such things such as, without limitation, linkages in, between, and among circulation patterns, relationships to architecture and urban design features, relationships to public and private spaces, which we talked about that not only being public parking, but also the canal bank in the area, usability, and coordination with adjacent properties. We kept, again, that new property shall have awnings and eyebrows to have more shade as people walk and then protect from the elements, undergrounding all utilities. and then adequate landscaping to provide screening for all above-ground facilities. The floor area ratio in the Central Business District is 1.0, and in the Gateway, it will remain a base of 1.0. What is being proposed is that properties may go up to 1.7, which is an increase of only 0.7, provided that they go and use a combination of creative excellence standards. Now, a property owner that chooses to renovate or reconstruct its property can simply say, I don't want to do any of this stuff, and keep a base FAR of 1.0. That person will still have to abide by some of the other features in the ordinance, meaning the design, the architecture, the pedestrian accessibility, all those elements, but they'd have to stay at a base of 1. For comparison, as I mentioned during the last meeting, what we did was we took a look at the entire Central Business District. While this ordinance expressly is limited to, we'll call it those first 3 or 2.5 blocks by the bridges, we just did an inventory of the entire Central Business District, and that's in your packet as well. For comparison, this building is an FAR of 1.2, and again, FAR is not necessarily tied to height, although height is a limiting factor. FAR is just about how much building you can build, how much volume of building. How much volume is going to be limited by your FAR, your setbacks, your parking requirements, and your height. All goes to bind these buildings into a box. By comparison, this building's at a 1.2. The Stadnick building is a 1.4. The Green Chiropractic building on the corner by the Baptist Church is a 1.7. And we have a couple buildings, the gym property, as well as this corner, one right next to the corner over here on Park, is 1.6. And that's how we established sort of the roof. That is to say, if a tornado, if a hurricane, if a building were to fall to fire, those buildings would not be able to come back, and neither would Stadnick's property, for example. So we established 1.7 as the height as a result of the Green Chiropractic building. So it's not simply by right that any property be developed up to an FAR of 1.7, but simply they have to produce a project that takes advantage or that implements some of these creative excellence standards. And I know that the conversation has been a lot about FAR, but I think if you look at the way the ordinance is written, the focus really is about design criteria. What are we trying to get? What does staff want to get out of these buildings? And the reality is that with the regulations being the way they are, you can only get so much before they further hamper any kind of renovation or any kind of reconstruction. So effectively, these creative elements, once are satisfied, they are worked through with staff, and you'll see them again through the site plan review process. That is, it's also not an automatic that they'll get it. To answer the question, I think that also Rogelio Madden brought up no double dipping in Section 6. No single element may be counted towards the satisfaction of more than one standard. So that is, somebody couldn't offer to build a gateway feature and also call it art in public places. You know, they couldn't, you know, just to give you an example of that. And just, William brought it up, that's an example of what we're trying to mean by gateway, that the property owners themselves, by way of these improvements, are the ones that start to improve the area. It wasn't necessarily a decision by staff to try and recommend to council to start bringing about some of these improvements using city dollars. And you'll see one other place where some of the monies that are going to be generated could also be used for that purpose. So, as a note by Chris, the amount of the FAR, there's a little note in the chart that says up to specified amount depending on degree of compliance. That is to say, if someone says I want to offer a gateway feature, well, you can't just put a little pole in the ground and call it a gateway feature and we give you the full credit. It's up to Chris's discretion to figure out how much is a person complying with the intent of this section. To that point, we incorporated all the council's feedback into that section. So we have site plan and design, art in public places. We identified that. We said the design and placement of the art is subject to approval by the city during the site plan review process. We also incorporated into this area the water fountains and water features that you said didn't necessarily warrant having its own category. Perhaps you can fold it into this. Also, if you look, while they're still highlighted, all the values have been reduced dramatically, and they're subject to any changes you might want to see. The rest of it stayed pretty much the same. We did eliminate an entire category of pedestrian accessibility because we made it a requirement as council wanted. And we also folded in specifically into the rights of way improvements, crosswalks, sidewalks, canal banks, as Councilman Petrolanda wanted, as a way to get there. And again, this is a sort of like a takeout menu. It's not necessarily that somebody that wants to come and beautify the property is going to do all of these things. They might say, I want to do 2 things to get myself up to a point 2. They might do 1 thing. They might do all of them, but just bear in mind that no matter what combination they use, even if they do more than what's required, they can never exceed that 0.7 increase. And the reality is that once you start getting to some of these sort of go hand in hand with others. So what we anticipate happening is that some of these things we'll see a beautified building, you might see some art, you might see new signage, and all of a sudden the value we're getting out of the project far exceeds the FAR increase that they got. The last thing that this ordinance does is address parking in the area. What the city has been historically doing is a couple things. One is using the neighborhood business district parking requirements for the central business district because it actually doesn't have any parking requirements. What's more is that there's quite a bit of grandfathering going in. That is, whether it is a building or a use, the city has allowed flexibility in uses coming in. So if a building was built, say to the Green Chiropractic building, it's FAR 1.7, whatever the parking requirements were back there, regardless of the use has been changing on the first floor, and we've seen that. So to give you an idea, if somebody had retail service, their parking requirements may have been something like 6, we looked at an example. And all of a sudden they put a restaurant in there, that use may require 13 parking spaces. Well, where are you going to put them? So to facilitate that continued business activity, despite the vacancies that we've got, Chris has been allowing that to occur. And so there is already some flexibility in the code. What this new section does is provide a little bit more flexibility. Given the unique configuration of some of the buildings, the location of a public parking lot behind some of the buildings, also the amount of parking on Canal Street, what this does is effectively allow Chris to say, I'm going to look at projects that come in on a case-by-case basis. And I'll look at all these different features, all these factors in determining what the parking calculations are. So that is availability of on-site parking, availability of on-street parking, the provision of bicycle parking, the distance to or inclusion of bus and trolley stops onto the project. That's also one of the elements of creative excellence. Internal capture of peak traffic trips. That's something that happens naturally when you have a mixed-use project. So if you've got people that have an office upstairs, they're going to go downstairs or to one of the surrounding restaurants for lunch. They're not going to get in their car and drive around. The idea is to increase that pedestrian activity. There's actually an engineering handbook that calculates that. Distance to public parking. As I mentioned, we have on-street parking. We also have a parking lot. And then the walking accessibility to the site. Once that's all factored in, there'll be a parking requirement. If the property decides to provide the need on-site, they're good to go. If they want the city to count either on-street parking spaces or parking spaces in the lot, there'll be a price per parking space that'll be set by resolution. We did it by resolution specifically so that we don't codify the amount in here because it'll take 2 readings to change, and that's subject to change. Those parking lot values have gone up with construction prices. And then those funds in turn could be the seed funds that the city turns around and feeds right back into the area. So that is it in a nutshell from the discussion at the special meeting. If you have any questions, Chris and I are happy to answer it. That's all I got, Mayor.
Do we want to discuss first, or allow the people as talk come up and speak?
Let the people come up first.
Okay. Well, first sign up here is Jen Gonzalez. Well, it's when you speak in 12A and 12B are the same, or the same situation.
It's 11.
Huh?
It's 11.
I'm sorry, 11. Oh, Don Hernandez. Sorry, 12. What's 12? Oh,
Circle.
That's a circle.
Donna Hernandez, 769 Pinecrest Drive. Good evening, Council and Mayor, City Manager. excuse me for hopping around, but was just something that I really wasn't aware of, was rolling up to this big old snowball, so forgive me for jumping around. But first of all, I would like to talk about the parking. With such a magnitude of a potential complex coming about to our city, you would think that we wouldn't be talking about parking spaces, but we would be talking about parking garages. It's something that has been spoken about for years, and I think we're way off the project if we're not talking parking garage. You're adding all these families. There's no way that our city can account for their spots. Number two, design. I agree. The city needs to enhance the area. The design is necessary. But whether you change the design to Pueblo, Art Deco, it doesn't matter. If you increase the FAR, you are increasing the density. Whether you cram 10 more apartments to a floor, or they ask for a variance eventually with their two-step and go up. FAR spells nothing but density. We all know that. This has been brought to the council 2 years ago. It was shot down. Once the residents find out about this, they are adamant in keeping the last of the Mohicans. The last of the Mohicans. We are the last of the small towns where we can still see the sunset and the sunrise. We're the last of it. And if you start little by little chipping away, where does this end? Where does one zone say, well, why can't we? All right? With all due respect to the widow Santana, I grieve for her. I'm sorry. But her issue of profit or her financial hardship should not be on the agenda. Many people can't sell their properties. Many commercial owners cannot sell their properties. And quite honestly, she bought a theater. There's not much you could do with the theater other than demolishing it, especially in the condition it's at, which, according to Mr. Santana, before he passed away, informed me it would take $1 million worth of code to get it to where it's at. We can't be held hostage for that. Our town cannot be told, well, we're going to help this lady out so she can sell her property. This is not the way that we do things. That should not be part of your decision making. The lady that came up here, East Drive, boy, just think about East Drive. Just think about Curtis Parkway. Just think about Westford Drive. And you need to be in the homes of these people when people can't find a way to get out of that bottleneck. Where are they going to go? You know where they're going to go. They're going to go to our neighborhoods. These are all the things that are coming into place, but the people of this town, they know about it, but they're just not being told about this now, how it's creeping into their lives again. And I think you're all going the wrong way. This is Mayberry. People are moving here because it's Mayberry. We don't want to look like Doral or the Gables, we don't want this. And I'm sorry to say, but I got to keep repeating myself. Density hikes, FAR hike is a hike in density. Regardless how you paint it, how you put an awning on it, it spells density more than what we have. The people here struggle in the traffic, and you can't keep putting more and more on them. We should be hearing more about more parks, boat ramps, community gardens. That's what this community is about. That's why people live here. That's why they move here. That's why they pay astronomical amounts of money for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. See what your people want. Don't keep looking at commercial people. I'm a commercial owner, and I know what I bought. And
Thank you.
I'm not going to try and change it. I know what I bought.
Thank you for coming. Thank you.
Please think of the people.
Mike, what's this?
Martin, last name Martin.
Martin?
Good evening, Miami Springs residents. Good evening, council, mayor. I'm a Miami Springs resident. I'm also a Miami Springs business owner. I've been in the circle for the last 9 years. It's a struggle for us, for small businesses like us. We want Miami Springs to grow. You know, we want to be able to bring things to our communities that we don't have. You know, a lot of times I get out of work at 9 o'clock at night on a Saturday, and I want to have a soup, a panera. I have to drive all the way to Doral. But, you know, these are things that would come into the city that would help us all. You know, as a business owner, as a resident, Miami Springs has a lot of beautiful things to offer. You know, why can't we grow a little? We have the space to do it. You know, I've never had a customer in 9 years that told me I can't find a parking space. And I've been there 9 years. You know, I think we need to grow as a city. I think it's going to benefit all of us, not only the residents, but the business owners. So I really would think that you should consider letting Miami Springs grow more. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Fleischman.
Kathy is on 12.
Oh, I'm 12. I'm sorry. Oh, this is messing me up these days. Okay, Eddie, this is a public hearing. Anybody wish to like to come up and speak?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Come here.
Good evening, Council. Rogelio Madden, 224 Lenape Drive, lifelong resident, and I'm also city planner. Definitely the ordinance is much improved from what I saw at the last meeting on Monday. I do have a few more comments on it. The first one is in the design standards, the first floor uses, it says it's limited to retail. You're probably going to want to limit that to retail and restaurants. And a few other, I don't know if there's a few other uses. You probably don't want office uses on the ground floor because you want some uses that are going to activate that space. The second comment, all floors shall be recessed except for an arcade. So it has a requirement that the building be built at the property line except the first floor. I would say that the whole building should be set back more or less to mirror the context of the Stadnik building. The Stadnik building has an arcade in the front, and the first and the second floor are one above the other. The second floor doesn't encroach over the arcade. And with the FAR of 1.7 and the removal of the rear yard, I think it fits. I did some personal massing studies of how it would look, and I think it fits. So I would say that the whole building should be recessed, with the exception of an arcade. As far as the setback goes, I did some other tests, and most of the sites can fit a 15-foot setback, but I think a 10-foot setback would be more reasonable. The one at Stadnik's is about 6 to 7 feet. It varies, and I think that's probably insufficient. I think the setback at Starbucks is probably a little bit insufficient. I think we want to have a little bit more open space so that we can have better pedestrian circulation, improvements to outdoor cafes, and more activity so that we don't have to go to Doral, because that's one of the things that you can reduce traffic, and that people don't have to leave town to go get services. They'll be able to stay in the area. And then the other thing, the landscape requirement, I like that for the mature trees, that's a bonus. You get points for that, but I still think that the landscape, the minimum standard of shade trees, 30 feet on center, should be made mandatory. I don't think that should be an optional thing. So with that being said, I definitely think it's improved. I would like to see a more active downtown. As someone who's been here my whole life, I would like to be able to go out in my own neighborhood and not have to go downtown, not have to go to Doral, and be able to enjoy my city and all the beautiful amenities, the waterfront, the canal front, and everything. And I think just with some tweaks, this could be made into a very good thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council. Mayor George Loeb, 860 Plover Avenue. I've lived here almost 20-something years. I don't think there's a month that goes by where I don't hear somebody asking, when is somebody going to do something with that theater? It looks horrible. I'd use something else, but we need to do something about it. We need to give people the ability to build something and make some money in doing it. If we don't, that property will be the same way for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, because nobody's going to put in money if they can't make a small profit, even a little bit of a profit. If you have, if you can only build this piece of paper and I'm only going to make $1 million on this piece of paper, but I got to pay $1.2 million to get this up to code, just this alone, there's no way I'm going to buy it. Nobody's going to buy it. This is a move forward. Everybody's talking about FAR and it's an increase in density. Not necessarily, because if you build two-story building with 14-foot floors, your FAR is going to be is one thing. If you build the same height building with 3 floors, yes, you'll have an increase in density. So there's different ways of building things. But we can't be scared of change. Yes, we are Mayberry. We all love this place. But how many people do you hear saying, man, I wish I didn't have to go to 82nd or 87th or to go get something to eat or to have some kind of a nightlife? How many people do you hear on a daily basis saying, I wish downtown was so much was nicer. I was down in Fort Lauderdale and it's beautiful there. You can walk all night long and you have restaurants and stuff like that. We're never going to get anything like that unless we make some kind of a change and allow anybody that wants to buy a property to build, because I don't care who's trying to sell. Nobody's going to buy here if they can't build something and make some kind of a profit.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Laz Martinez, 1021 Meadowlark Avenue. I'm a resident, a business owner, and a commercial property owner. I want to speak a little to what Donna said. I think one of the reasons that we don't have more popularity here and the rates are so high is driven by our tax base. And that's mainly the issue that I want to bring up, because everybody's already said a lot of different things about how much nicer the downtown area would be. I hear that too from a lot of people. A lot of businesses don't come in here because of the way we look, and they don't feel they're going to generate the kind of revenues needed in order to sustain their business. But as a longtime resident here and as an owner who continues to see their property taxes go up, we don't have a lot of residential properties left to develop here to increase the tax base. I continue to see people leaving to Miami Lakes and to other cities as they're looking for property here because our taxes are so high. I don't really know where we sit today, but at last that I looked, we were like about 3rd in the county in tax rate, and for a city of our size, that's a lot for the owners to bear when you're already paying the amount of money for a property and you have to add the insurance and you have to add the taxes. That could be a determining factor whether somebody comes into the city or not. So I think as a council, you have a significant obligation to increase the tax base to lessen the burden on the property owners. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? Last chance.
He can talk?
Why not?
Tom Curtis. I just have a question on your core area. It doesn't include Canal Street. So wouldn't this area include Canal Street? Like Crackers and...
Yes.
And
Yes.
Deborah?
Yes. It
Well,
includes
doesn't say that.
all the way to Nakota.
In your description, it doesn't say that.
Map says it. The map shows it.
I'll address that.
It says the core area. Core area does not include Canal Street.
Good afternoon, Alex Miranda, 220 Morningside Drive. I've been a resident for close to 18 years now and practice my business and run my business out of Miami Springs as well. And I hear people say, and I see a lot of Facebook posts and arguments and discussions going on that bring up, problems that we all face, that we all see. One of the most recent threads was relating to how many more important things aren't there out there that the city should be investing money in. And it's such a misinformation, and it's such a it's a shame that people don't see the fact that this is a small compromise, a small step in offering businesses the opportunity to help the city accomplish some of the things that we don't have the money for. It's an opportunity to get the business owners who have a vested interest already in the community to help the city accomplish some of the projects that we don't have the money for in our coffers. And that was some of the arguments online, and people saying, well, we don't have the money for this, we don't have the money for this. Well, exactly. Why not give a little bit of leeway to the businesses that are already here, want to improve, that will help enhance our community, enhance our business district, enhance the beauty of our community for the benefit of all the residents and other businesses alike. I also hear people saying, see what the people want. Businesses are also the people, and people want change. People want enhancement of our community. So I welcome this, and I encourage the council to really pursue this, because I think it could only be beneficial to the community.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I close the public hearing.
Mayor,
Okay.
to answer just a couple points. So in section B, the boundaries identified in the city's future land use map, which again, it's part of the first ordinance, as the Gateway District shall be defined as the area bounded by Canal Street, the alley southeast of Hook Square, that's behind Washington's Gym, South Royal Point Sienna, North Royal Point Sienna, and Nakota Drive, which is the street next to the farm store and by Crackers in that area. And then we identify all the tracks by somewhat of a, I think, pretty accurate at this point, legal description.
So that does include Canal Street then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it does. Just
He just
He's so stubborn. He is.
it's all right, Tom.
It's okay.
I won't hold it against you. It's all right.
What page, Tom?
William will show you. That's from 12 years ago.
That's our reporter. That's our reporter right there. We would like you to stand up and give us a retraction there, fella.
You gotta love him.
Boy. Yeah, that'll be the day.
No.
Like old John Wayne would say, that'll be the day you put something in the paper.
To Tom's point, we took from Dover Coal, but this is its own thing.
No, he's right. It is in there. Yeah.
Well, just on the issue of parking, parking garages are possible. As a matter of fact, if you whether it's a theater property or Washington's Gym property, whether it's a standalone garage or you incorporate parking garages into your building, that's possible. It's just simply it wasn't the administration's prerogative at this point to be recommending that in light of the cost. That sort of, we'll call it that parking impact fee that is associated with it, that could go towards funding parking improvements, although parking garage is costly. So that was part of the conversation. As was discussed last time, traffic calming are features that are right-of-way improvements that, whether it's improving a crosswalk, bulb outs, or different things like that, that can be included into a project for creative excellence purposes. And again, there was just a comment that was made that, just to be clear, this is an increase. Density is a word associated with like number of units. So if Central Business District allowed 100 units and you went to 150 units, that's an increase in density. This is an increase in building intensity by 0.7. And that allows for all the current uses that are allowed in Central Business District. But the moment that you introduce residential, I mean, look, the reality is, and we've got 2 city planners in the room that can identify, the increase in FAR is such that you cannot get that much building under air. That is, with an FAR of even 1.7, if you were to max out at 1.7, in order to get a purely commercial building, because again, residential is capped at 3 stories, no matter what. But if you were to do a pure commercial building of 1.7, to get up and over 3 stories, you'd be building some kind of tower. Because again, if the Green Chiropractic building is 1.7, even if you recess the front, how much building can you get, considering the lot sizes in the Central Business District, and especially in this gateway? So just I wanted to clarify that, because the idea that you have unlimited height to go, it's not a multiplying effect. There are all these caps that still keep you small in size of the footprint of the building.
Through the chair, a question for the attorney. The Green Chiropractic building is, I thought I understood 1.62 FAR?
1.7.
1.7.
Yeah.
What percentage of that building is parking?
It has
4 spots.
50%?
4 spots in the rear.
In the rear.
Yeah, in the rear.
But
yeah.
There's quite a bit of area of that building that's eaten into underground for it to be parking.
Yes.
So in effect, what does that bring the usable area aside from parking to the building?
Well, I mean, so under the current Central Business District rules, there is a rear yard setback.
Correct.
That again, a lot of the buildings currently use for parking or for the placement of a dumpster or their other garbage receptacle. What this calls for is, since we're asking for them to be recessed, whatever number of feet you ultimately decide, the idea is let's activate the front as a result of eliminating that rear yard setback. And then the parking works hand in hand with it, because it's saying if your building is really, really small, are you solving the parking for that building with 2 spots in the back? The reality is you're not. And if you mandate the same on-site parking, there's no point in increasing the FAR, because you simply, the way it works right now in Central Business District is that your building is your building and you're grandfathered in parking. But for example, if a building decided to enclose an existing terrace, all that now has to meet the parking requirements in neighborhood business districts. So you wouldn't be able to accommodate the parking on site, so you wouldn't build the increase.
Correct.
And those 2 things go hand in hand. So the idea is, since it's really difficult to legislate individual properties, it's to give the expert the opportunity to create a parking solution based on a specific property.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I'd like to say something. Unless Maria wants to go.
No, go first.
Okay, so I was very satisfied at the last meeting in terms of all of the back and forth and all of the changes that resulted from that last meeting, specifically in terms of the incentives that businesses have. Like everyone, most people here in Miami Springs, I've lived here 35 years, and we all know why we move into the city. However, when I drive through Hialeah, I'm so glad I don't live in Hialeah, but when I come into Miami Springs and see that theater that looks like an abandoned warehouse, I always wish that could be nicer, that area. And the one thing I like about what's being proposed here is that there's a lot of clarity in terms of what's being proposed, in terms of where the limits are. And we've even discussed in the city with the city planner about tightening up the code so that those things that are not permissible in one code and not really highlighted as permitted in another fall into a gray area, how we can tighten that just to protect ourselves as a city to maintain what we have. But I think it's a wonderful opportunity to have our downtown area be much nicer and attractive, not just to people from the outside, but people who live here. So you know what really makes me cringe? Because I'm not looking at this as helping Ms. Santana. I'm looking at taking a structure that presently looks like something abandoned and ugly and having the opportunity of somebody come in and do something very nice. And I know that people have been concerned about the fact that that's a historical building. Well, how concerned are we when we have let it fall to that state that it's in? And what can we do with it now? When I think about a parking garage, then I really worry about traffic. And then I really worry about density and congestion. We have a parking garage in Lincoln Road. You've seen the traffic getting in and out of there? I don't want anything like that here. Spoke at last meeting, and the changes were made in terms of a hotel and things like that, and really protecting what people want in this community, because I do listen to the residents in this community. I know they definitely don't want that. I don't want that. So I really have no issue with moving forward with this today, and think that we're taking a step in the right direction.
One thing, do you you want to speak? Go ahead.
I have a question for Chris. Regarding section D, I guess, where we say for any on-street parking spaces counted toward the satisfaction of a property's requirement or any spaces otherwise waived as a result of one of these factors below, a fee shall be paid to the city for each parking space. Chris, can you explain one of my concerns? And again, I think this is a great opportunity for us to move forward and create some vitality in our downtown and promote the idea of all of us being out there and enjoying everything that Miami Springs has the potential to still offer that isn't offering now. But I'm concerned with the tipping point for this parking. Right now, we have limited amount of parking available, and it's substantial. And I brought that up last year when we were looking at creating parking over on Curtis Parkway. There's substantial parking along Canal Street and areas. You know, I was there last week and took photos at 12:30 in the afternoon on a weekday and counted, I don't know, 50, 60 open spaces easily. So it's not a problem. But what I don't understand is if we make allowances every time somebody builds, that they don't have to provide the requirement, the parking that is now, eventually, you know, we keep eating away at those parking spaces. How does that work?
Well, remember, keep in mind that right now we have that same policy in place by code without paying money into a fund that could go to solve the problem. For example, if you had a existing office on the ground floor here in the Central Business District and it converted to a restaurant, there's a great difference between the amount of parking that the office requires and that the restaurant requires, and we just simply waive that. We don't look for any method to satisfy that. This would be sort of the same thing, except they will pay into a fund that we can then use to enhance parking lots, enhance the lighting, enhance the signage. At some point, maybe that money goes into purchasing a lot for a surface parking lot. If things really become successful at some point, the logical progression is fix the parking that we have, create new surface parking lots. Parking lots then go to parking garages. That was the experience on Miami Beach. I don't think we'll ever get there. I don't think we'll ever need to have that kind of parking, but that's the reality. And keep in mind also, the opportunity for people to come in and do this is pretty limited. You're not going to have some mad rush to redevelop your Central Business District. If we get it on the theater property where it really makes some good sense, and perhaps a couple of others, we're going to be happy if we get that. So you have to monitor it. You start to see, keep the pulse on it. If we start to see that things are really getting better and getting successful, we may raise the fee. We may start to limit it, that you can waive no more than 50%. We just need to monitor that and watch it as it goes along. But I'm really comfortable for right now that what we'll have in place is more than sufficient.
How does, what are your thoughts on, say someone builds the ground retail and then residential up top? So the residents need parking in the evenings.
Well, that's the beauty of a residential in a commercial district. All the business owners and the patrons go home when the residents come in. So it's almost like a shared parking. You don't need...
There's a little overlap there where it's not, doesn't happen, because if what we envision is vitality to this area, that hopefully means that we'll have people there at the restaurants and at the ice cream shop and all at 7, 8, and 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah, it's
and
not,
that's
it's
when
not
residents are home.
Correct. It's not a pure shared like, church and nightclub or something. It's not. It's not quite like that. But there's a good opportunity right now for plenty of parking to have that happen. Frankly, I would love to see us to get some residential units on the upper floors in our downtown. It makes it more vibrant, and as Dan pointed out, if you live upstairs and you don't get in your car and go to do your shopping, you walk over to Milan's, you walk down the street to the restaurant. So it captures a lot of trips that you're not going to need that separate uses would need.
Can I add to that as well? The other thing that, so as Chris is making his parking calculation, one of the requirements is on-site parking. How many spots can you accommodate on your property? And so let's just say that a building, again, we're not talking about a lot of units. Say a building goes and says wants to go up a floor and can accommodate 3 units. You know, Chris can determine, all right, well, these are going to be reserved parking spaces for these units. We're going to need an X number on site, and those are going to be for that, and then the rest could be for commercial. And so part of the parking requirement flexibility is to give Chris that ability to say, you know, we recognize the fact that you're going to have your business patrons come and use your on-street parking or the surface slot, but you might have residents that stay there all day, or even to the effect that you can also have office above the first floor, and you might want to have some dedicated parking for that office patron, whether it's a rental. I think it's going to rental office space. Sometimes parking spaces are offered as part of that office rental product that you're offering, and so that'll go to Chris's calculation in reaching this very factor at the very end.
Anything from you, Ms. Chris?
Mayor, I still have a few other things, please. The art and public places component. I don't see anything in here that limits offensive art. Do we have other codes that cover that? I see something in here that, you know, it can't be directional elements and they can't be mass produced, but if a building owner says this is an expensive piece of art and would like to place it there, and it's, you know, by a qualified artist, a respected artist, how do we?
Well, we'll have some implementing guidelines for art, which could come back to council for approval or for further discussion if you like. But certainly, as part of our sign code, obscenity is something that is clearly prohibited. Anything that's lewd and lascivious is also. So at the end of the day, if somebody decided to put something of that nature, Chris is well within his right to deny them the ability to put it up, let alone to get extra credit for it.
Okay. I have another question regarding Chris, and I have the utmost respect for you, Chris. As you know, we've talked numerous times. In making these judgment calls with creative excellence elements, they rely solely on you. Will they come to the council?
Absolutely. So don't rely solely on me.
Okay,
I will bring you a recommendation
of
that this is my analysis of this, that this serves the public art is up to, let's say, 2.0. I think this is a lesser piece, a smaller piece. I would allow that to have a bonus of 0.1 and not 0.2. Maybe they make their case and come to you and say, oh, I'd like 1.5, or I want 2, or you may say 1's too much, give it 0.5. So that's, you affirm that. I simply make a recommendation, just as we do now with all of our projects.
Okay. The other thing is, with the building recessed, section 2A, I would like to, is this the time that we do it? Determine how much, okay.
I was going to bring that up.
Okay, and I would like to, I think it's reasonable for us to go between the 10 to 15 feet, 10 feet minimum. What I envision, this is an opportunity for us to make this a pedestrian promenade. To really, if we're going to do this, let's not just say we're trying to improve businesses there or allow businesses to grow a little bit or something. Let's really do it with some vision to make Miami Springs what we all kind of would envision it being, but in reality it's not, and it's a place where as pedestrians we can go there, we can walk, we can meet each other. Right now, if you try to walk along, I think Stagnant Drugs is a perfect one. You know, there's little tables outside, but really you have to walk in a single file if you want to make that curve.
Sure.
So I think we should go for the gold ring and
we had discussed it
10 feet.
Between 5 and 10.
Well,
we're looking
I think 10 and 15. 15 where possible, maybe with an architectural element, you know, if it's possible, but if not, the 10 minimum.
Okay, we can do that. We could say.
Well, does council agree with this? I mean, do you want to go with what does council agree with what she's saying? I mean, our planner came up here and mentioned straight, no overhang. Were you thinking of incorporating that in?
Well, that's another point. I mean, Rogelio gave some really good feedback to bring the ordinance
Right.
forward, so I want to address some of his comments. But we left it blank because we were looking at the Bella Bakery property, and we just didn't have the dimensions there. I think they only recessed 5 feet, except that it's a little bit misleading because they have such a large sidewalk in comparison to other parts of the downtown. And so we talked about 5 to 10 feet. We could potentially put 10 mandatory, and if somebody wants to give 15, give a little bit of a bonus for that.
I'm a little concerned if we don't have that uniformity, and I'm also concerned if we make a minimum that people could set it so far back that they envision a really lively outdoor cafe or something, and if that fails, we've got a building that's doomed, that's sitting back 20 or 25 feet from the sidewalk.
That's a good point.
That really concerns me. I would suggest that we choose a number, and I'm comfortable with 10, and that's both the minimum and the maximum. That's the standard.
I think 10 is a really pleasant, if you've looked at areas where they have the 10 feet, it's an area where we'll be.
All right, does everybody agree with 10 feet?
Yeah, that's fair.
10 feet? 10, yes? Yeah, I want a yes?
Yes.
Yes, yes, okay. All right, 10 feet.
The second point, I think Rogelio's recommendation on saying retail and restaurant as far as the uses for the first floor, I think it's good to incorporate that. And then saying that offices shall be kept off first floor.
Yeah, that was definitely the intention. And our intention always was to view restaurants as the retail service of food, that covered under the retail. But it certainly doesn't hurt to
All right,
clarify
so some of these things what you're talking about will be amended for the second reading.
And well, if there is a motion to approve,
Right.
I'll incorporate some of these things right now into the motion.
Okay.
So those two things. Then the last thing, well, we have 2 more issues that Rogelio brought up. One is, and it's sort of making the sausage up here, but the whole building except the arcade be recessed. I mean, we had talked about activating the front. Chris, I don't know, feedback on council about that offering from Rogelio.
I think my preference is to keep the building at the property line with no setback, just the arcade. But that's the will of the council. If you would like to see the whole building set back.
I guess the comparison, you have Rogelio's example is Stadnik's. The example that's in the code was based off of the conceptual rendering in the Dover Cole. So that is, you have a recessed first floor, but you sort of have that cantilevered second floor, maybe third floor.
Well, I mean, I like that idea. I like that.
Bringing okay. All right, so we'll leave that.
I like the way it was.
Okay.
Mayor, I still have more.
Okay. Anything?
Okay.
No, I'm going to let Mr.
All right,
Petrolario go
okay.
a little bit.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to make a point regarding parking. The new generations is using Uber more and more, so we shouldn't really. I mean, parking is always a problem, but a lot of people nowadays, and it seems like the trend is going that way. We're older, and the new generation. I have a niece that's 23 years old. She doesn't even have a driver's license. She Ubers everywhere, so that's something to look forward to. I was just going to ask if we can have the city planner from Miami Beach. He's a good source as far as that. Regarding, if you can share with us, do you see an increase? Do you have an increase in parking nowadays with all these new technologies where people Uber and Lyft and everything, or do you see that trend reducing the needs of parking?
On Miami Beach, we're definitely seeing the trends reducing the needs of parking significantly. The hotels, the parking garages are maybe 10% full on a busy weekend because everybody's using the Uber. City's garage revenue has reduced in a lot of the public parking garages in a lot of places. Some of them, on Lincoln Road, they still do well, but there are other areas of the cities where the garages used to do well, and they're not doing well because people are biking more. People are using Uber, public transportation. The county has put in a lot of shuttle buses. Miami Springs has a shuttle bus now that goes to Metro Rail, so more people are using public transportation. So we're definitely seeing a downward trend in parking.
Do you foresee any new technologies that's going to even increase that need for extra parking?
I see technology is going to reduce the need because more people are going to be using, in the future, we're seeing a lot of technology for self-driving cars moving forward. So, it's probably 10, 15 years out, but a car will pick somebody up, drop them off, and then it will go do something else, go pick somebody else up. It seems far off, but it's really around the corner, and it's gonna change the demand for parking because that car is not going to need a parking spot. And it's not going to need an individual parking spot because the cars will just be able to queue up, and then the car at the end will be able to go and pick up the next person. So you won't need to have the ability to maneuver each individual car. So it's definitely going to change a lot of things in terms of parking, and we're going to have a lot of surface lots and garages that we're going to have to figure out what to do with them. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your insight.
Anything
That's all
else?
I have, Mayor.
That's it?
Just on that point also, some cities are now requiring parking garages because they're feeling that they're going to become obsolete. Some cities are now requiring that the levels of parking garage be 10 or 12 feet, not 7.5 feet, so that they can be reused for purposes for retail, for office, for residential. So that's sort of a growing trend that they're already identifying, as Rogelio said, on the horizon is going to be, they're becoming obsolete and we're going to need them, so we better build in something to adaptive reuse for them.
Anything else, Mr. Petro?
Chris, what are your thoughts on what was brought up earlier by Rogelio of making the landscaping mandatory and not making it an architectural feature? I think
Well, street trees, definitely, I would not want to give any kind of performance bonus to provide street trees. They're just required. I think what we were looking at more was, but my thinking was on that is if they do street trees, a typical street tree minimum requirement is 12 feet. My thought was that if we do a 50% larger than minimum, i.e. if you put 18-foot street trees instead of 12-foot street trees, you get a bonus for that. If you just do 12-foot street trees, 25 or 30 foot on center, there's no bonus for that. You must do that.
Right.
It's the kind of thing we talked about with the pedestrian amenities. It's just something that you have to do. We expect that of you.
And it makes sense. We're a Tree City, USA, and they need to honor that.
so. You're saying that this amenity, the last amenity on here, that what you're doing is just asking them to.
Yeah, I would not incentivize providing street trees. I would incentivize providing larger street trees, larger landscaping, more lush and abundant landscaping.
That's in the ordinance.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's fine.
We may just need to clarify that.
Yeah, I don't see it clear here. You know, it's.
We'll add the language of the maturity to both elements.
It just seems like landscaping, you know, is a bonus point. And I'd
Some
like it to be
some landscaping would be, but
but it's substantial. Let's require substantial landscaping as mandatory,
Correct.
and then
or
really
there's no bonus for that.
Okay. I wanted to just bring up a point of we said no hotels in the area, but Airbnbs are allowed.
Right.
So
there's nothing we can do about that.
That's a different so it's possible.
We would if we tried to regulate it now, we'd be violating the preemption that passed in 2011, and I'll tell you, Airbnb and VRBO and HomeAway, all they do is monitor municipal legislation to see if they decide to sue and make an example of somebody. As a matter of fact,
Which we don't need.
Miami-Dade County passed. So if you pass regulations about sort of the sharing of properties before 2011, you're grandfathered in. The Florida legislature last year, or actually this year, proposed a bill that died, fortunately, that was going to even undo that. Miami-Dade County didn't have a regulation on the books. There's some cities that did. Miami-Dade County, what they did is said, we're going to pass a new ordinance, and we're going to rely on some language in our comp plan as grounds for it. I mean, right now I can tell you that both VRBO and Airbnb are contemplating, they're in discussions with the county, but they're thinking about suing them and to get some favorable case law on the books. And if, you know, all they do is look around to make an example out of one to scare other cities from backing off. So unfortunately, to the extent that, you know, we continue to limit long-term leases and subdivision of properties like we do throughout the city, but any new regulations would be preempted by state statute on short-term rentals like that.
Okay, just want the council to all be aware of that. And I guess the last thing I wanted to, and I don't know this is the right time to do it or not, but I'd like to ask, I had already requested last week, asked the city manager to put this item on the agenda of the Architectural Review Board, because I really strongly believe that we need to tap into the professional expertise of a lot of our residents, and that's the reason for the advisory boards. And it really fits very well with the description of the Architectural Review Board that we have online. But I'd also like to ask that we put this on the agenda of the Planning and Zoning Board, which Rogelio happens to be on, because in looking at what's required for that, I think it says that development, and I have it on my phone, but it fits in nicely with their expertise, their background, and also just to get their input before we move forward with the second, before the next meeting when we review this.
Can I say something about that? I for one, don't think it should go to the architectural. I don't think that this is purely an architectural piece that we're talking about here. I think that we've talked about it ad nauseum between last meeting, this meeting, and the next one coming up. We certainly can invite members of the architectural board to be here and provide input. I think that waiting for an architectural board meeting is going to delay what happens with this. It's just going to have citizens more concerned about whether this is happening or not happening, and create perhaps, you know, things that don't need to happen in this community. I'm, for one, I'm very supportive of our boards. I think our boards you provide the community's voice, but I think that the community is here. I think that everyone very much has been aware, and I don't think we're changing planning and zoning, are we?
No.
Oh.
No, the zoning code, the underlying land use stays the same, and the underlying zoning stays the same.
So
I'd
I
like
just think,
to-
and based on what I know, the members of the architectural board, more than what we've discussed here, I don't know what more they can offer.
I'd like to read the Architectural Review Board, what's on our website, its purpose. The Architectural Review Board is charged with advising the City Council on issues affecting our diverse commercial districts. Livelier commercial districts are not only more attractive to business owners and prospective owners, they also create a designation that inspires commerce and puts our beloved Miami Springs on the map. The board extends an invitation to community members to join them and to help create a thriving business district in our downtown. So it's not architectural, Councilwoman. It's particularly
but
has
that's
to do
under-
with this art.
But that's under our preview to ask them to do that. It's not a requirement that it has to be part of this project or any project. That's up to us to go ahead and ask them for their advice and put on an agenda form for them to go ahead and do it. It's not something that has to be done. You could go ahead and we can vote on having it put on as an agenda item for either board, but I don't think it has to have anything to do with, and they can review what we've decided to do. But in my opinion, we're here now. I think our experts with the city planner, the city attorney, and our resident here that's from Miami Beach, I think we've got we've had quite a bit of talk about it to go forward. You want to, huh? Oh, from Miami
But
Springs.
you work in Miami Beach.
He works
From Miami Springs, so I think we can, if there's any more questions with the amendments, I think we can, do you want to have a motion as amended, or you want to give how do you want to do it?
So on what we can do is take it as two separate votes. So the first, we read them both into the record. So I think the appropriate course of action is to get a motion to approve the ordinance creating the overlay land use district on the comp plan, and also amending the future land use map. And I think that should be your first motion if there's a desire to approve it.
Okay. Does somebody want to make the motion?
Motion to move the item, sir.
Call the vote.
Vice Mayor Zapata?
Yes.
Councilman Best?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mitchell?
Yes.
Councilman Petrolanda?
Yes.
Mayor Bain?
Yes. Now we go for the second one.
Second one, Mayor, it would be approval of the ordinance as written, except for, I'm just going to go through, the first floor shall be recessed 10 feet. The uses on the first floor shall be limited to retail and restaurant. Office shall be permitted but kept off the first floor. And the landscaping for on-site and for street trees shall only be a creative excellence element to the extent that they're 50% bigger than the minimum standard.
Okay.
And I think those are the three elements that were, and then the council again decided to keep the frontage where it is.
A motion?
Motion to approve item as read and amended.
Do I get a second?
You have a second, sir.
Call the vote.
Vice Mayor Zapata?
Yes.
Councilman Best?
Aye.
Councilwoman Mitchell?
Yes.
Councilman Petrolanda?
Yes.
Mayor Bain?
Yes. Okay.
Mayor, if I might, real quick before we move on. I would not look at this, ladies and gentlemen, as a major change. I would look at it as attention to detail. We have had some very knowledgeable people in front of us over the last 3 or 4 sessions that we've been here discussing this. I don't think anybody up here is for density in this town. I think what we are for is not letting the place die on a vine. And this is an excellent opportunity for us to look at stuff and in some small way tweak it going forward. Nobody's getting hurt by this. It's not costing the city any money, and it's going to do nothing but attempt, as Chris said, probably correctly, attempt to attract people to come in and invest in Miami Springs and do right things and to improve the frontage along Canal Street and coming into the city. I think this was extremely appropriate, Council.
Okay, I'm going to recess the meeting for 5 minutes. I got a
Oh, so everybody's holding it. You haven't held it?
I haven't held it.
Why?
Next time.
Okay. We'll restart the meeting. Do I need a motion? Do I call roll again? No.
No. Hey, Bill, come on, man.
I knew that. Okay, we go on to other business, 12A.
Yeah,
We
Request-
got
go ahead.
11C, don't we?
Where's C? Oh, yeah, we do have C. 11C, approval of Fourth Amendment.
The extension.
Yeah.
The City of Meridian Management, LLC, Meridian, executed a settlement agreement dated December 21st, 2011, which has been amended a number of times since then. The last amendment expired December 21st, 2017. Meridian has requested an extension to December 21st, 2019. The settlement agreement dealt with giving Meridian exclusive rights to billboards in the annexation area in the event annexation is approved. Meridian has agreed that in exchange for this extension, they will cover the cost to the city for any advertising and mailing campaigns related to our November 2018 annexation election. During 2017, Meridian reimbursed the city for approximately $23,000 in costs for the new annexation application the city had to file. Meridian also reimbursed the city $3,920 during 2013 for annexation-related costs. Staff recommends approval of the extension. I provided for you the current extension and the last extension that that has expired. It's in your packet.
Motion?
Through the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Maria. I'm sorry.
Motion to approve.
Second. For
Any
discussion, please.
Any discussion?
Here, sir. Through the chair. The $27,000-ish that Meridian has recompensated the city for was city outlaid money already, and
Correct.
just to give us back to what we'd invested.
Correct.
Toward the center.
It was the cost of the reapplying for the annexation that we had to do last year, where we had to do the mail outs and all that.
Right.
And they reimbursed us for all of that.
And we're paid for that, and this is just going forward. It's more of a contingency than anything else?
Correct.
Thank you, sir.
Plus, I think if they will pay, evidently what they're saying here, they're going to pay the portion of the money we got to give to the county for the election in November for annexation.
For the mail outs that are done.
Right.
Yeah, partially. Right.
Okay. I got a first and a second. Call the vote.
Vice Mayor Zapata?
Yes.
Councilman Best?
Aye.
Councilman Mitchell?
Yes.
Councilman Petrolano?
Yes.
Mayor Bain?
Okay, we got, yes. Now we're to 12A. I have three people. Go ahead, you can read it.
This is a
Mr. Mayor.
request, Councilwoman Mitchell, for council to consider a resolution supporting the efforts of the young ladies that are trying to get a circle crosswalk. And I believe they're here tonight, right?
Well, I have Jen Gonzalez.
That's her.
And you want to, well, I'll let you speak last. How about that? Okay. Mikey?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Michael Gavilla. I support this project. I think the perfect place to do the crosswalk would be from Curtis Parkway, then Starbucks, because I think Starbucks would be more dangerous. But that's my idea, and Commissioner Sosa has supported it. Thank you.
Okay, we got Kathleen Fleischman. Oh, Kathleen.
Kathleen Fleischman, 810 Pinecrest Drive. And I want to thank Councilwoman Mitchell for bringing this resolution up for discussion. I think it's a great idea. Everybody that's ever walked to town, which we have a number of times, our biggest concern is getting from one side of it to the other. And there's just got to be a better way to make that happen. I love being pedestrian friendly, and I think we have kind of a great segue with this new idea for Gateway. So I think it's just all sort of dovetails together. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Bender?
Hello. My name is Danielle Bender. I'm at 209 Navajo Street, and I'm in support of this project. I'd like to note that the two young ladies that are coming to speak about it are currently applying for a public space challenge grant through the Miami Foundation, which can award up to $25,000 for individual projects. That money does not need to be matched. So just putting that out there. I was a Public Space Challenge recipient for a project previously, and I think that these projects are a great benefit to our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the star of the show, come on up. You have a partner in this, right? Bring her up too, yeah.
Good evening, members of the council. Jennifer Gonzalez, 393 Manola Drive.
Maria Font, 267 Dakota Drive. Thank you for having us.
So we're here today because we applied for a public space challenge to add crosswalks to Circle Park and to beautify the park with native pollinator gardens. And we submitted this proposal because we felt that it was an underutilized green space and also a missed opportunity to activate a business district and connect the existing bike paths and make our downtown district overall more walkable and safer for our community. In addition to the Public Space Challenge, we've also applied for a grant through the AARP Community Challenge, and so we are hoping for additional funds from there. As Danielle mentioned, typically the most that the Public Space Challenge awards is $25,000, but that's not to say that they can't award more. And then we're hoping to supplement that with some funds from the AARP Challenge. We've also put together a team of extremely talented individuals. We have a landscape architect from Curtis & Rogers, Jean Lee, who specializes in sustainable design, who would be the person that would design our native pollinator gardens. This is sustainable planting. It benefits pollinators and people. It beautifies the business district, activates an underutilized green space, and also brings interest to the business district. In addition to Jean Lee, we have a really celebrated urban planner, Tony Garcia of Street Plans Collaborative. He has worked with the county. This is a county road that we're proposing to put the crosswalks on, as you all know. He's worked with the county before. He's also someone who has worked with the county on the Quick Build Challenge, which specializes in activating public spaces, making them more walkable, and bridging the gap that exists currently in our urban dynamics, where things are car friendly but they're not people friendly. And so what he does is he makes the design more efficient and effective within the current infrastructure. Sorry, I'm a little nervous.
Just relax. You're doing a great job.
I feel like I'm rambling.
No, you're not rambling. You're doing a great job. Take
Thank
your
you.
time.
So through the
I've been there, so don't worry about it.
There may be additional funds at our disposal through the Quick Build Challenge, and a lot of the things that you all have addressed through the Gateway Project. You're looking to not only make things more walkable, but you're looking to enhance the business district, make it more of a cafe setting, make it more of a promenade. These are things Tony can help us out with through the Quick Build program, and it would be at a no investment from the city. He could propose something temporary that we could live with for a little while and see and potentially look to see how that affects our city, and then you can think about investing. So our proposal for the crosswalks and pollinator gardens is really the intersection of environmental stewardship and really smart urban design, and it's a step forward in the right direction towards progress.
Where are you going to put the crosswalks? Where's your proposed place?
So our initial proposal is on either side of Curtis.
No, well, it's all open right now. The thing is that we met with Commissioner Rebecca Sosa, and the first step to get her involved is that you guys need to support this.
You need a resolution from us
you need
in
a
support.
resolution and an email, just an email to her saying you support it, so that she can get a meeting with the traffic department.
Right. We understand that you guys
We're not
on the
experts,
crosswalk before,
so
and it was denied by the county.
Right.
And so she would order a new traffic study.
She already ordered a new traffic study, I think. She was pulling the old traffic study done in the circle, and then she was going to order a new one. Right.
Okay, so what you need from us is just to contact her and let her know?
Yes.
No resolution?
Yes, resolution.
Right.
Yeah, you need a resolution,
Yeah.
right?
And
Okay.
then we would need someone from the city of Miami Springs to attend that meeting with Rebecca Sosa and the traffic department to
Okay.
determine, like, we're not gonna place a crosswalk, whatever the
Right.
traffic department
And-
decides the safest place.
Okay,
we can
where's your
propose a
where's your
location.
standing with the grants? Where you stand?
Here this month, we'll hear whether we're finalists in the Public Space Challenge, and
But we
should
were
hear back
number
on the AARP grant. by
we
the
were
end of
number
this month.
one in likes and comments, so we are at the top.
Okay, so you'll know everything about funds by the end of the month.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
But I would urge you to go ahead, please, and approve this resolution today, just because when
We
get
have to.
approval-
The resolution will be. We'll ask to do it now, but it'll be brought up the next council meeting.
It will be. I'm begging-
The resolution will vote to propose the resolution for next council meeting, and then it'll be prepared and voted on. 2 weeks.
Right now, we'll vote on it next time, but it'll be
We're so
prepared
new
now.
at this.
I know.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
All right. Take care. Good job.
Thank you.
Okay.
motion for the
Yeah.
resolution?
Make them.
I'd like to make a motion that we move forward and create the resolution for presentation at the next council meeting. And in this motion, I also like to include that we communicate to Rebecca Sosa that we're doing this to give her a heads up.
Sure.
Second.
Call the vote.
Vice Mayor Zapata?
Yes.
Councilman Best?
Aye.
Councilman Mitchell?
Yes.
Councilman Petrolanda?
Yes.
Mayor Banks?
Yes. Okay. You'll get it next meeting. Okay.
Mayor, may I say something?
Sure, Maria.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
That in reading through the Dover Coal report of 2001, one of the things that they mentioned is the difficult access to the circle. And they say one of the reasons the park is underutilized might be the traffic is making pedestrian access dangerous, and they recommend crosswalks. So this is really kind of fortuitous because it's in keeping with.
Did you read that? Did you read that, Dover Cole? No. You didn't, did you? How'd you get it? What is it? It ended up being. It might have been common sense, huh? Just common sense. Okay, whatever that means, but common sense, right? All right, we got the city attorney. Anything from you?
Too funny.
No, Mayor. I guess just one thing, I suppose. As you all know, litigation is commenced against the operator of the country club. Depending on response, we may or may not have a shade session. We're hoping that this will be resolved quickly, but if not, we'll be calling a shade session. Actually, what I'll do is take the opportunity to announce the need for a shade session under Chapter 286 of the Florida statutes. If we need it, I've announced it. If not, then it's been resolved, hopefully.
What's the name of the attorney that's being the Donald Trump from our city?
Adriana
that's a
Fajardo.
separate thing. Fajardo
Orshan.
How do you pronounce it?
Ariana Fajardo Orshan.
Ariana Fajardo. She was. She's Southern District.
She's been appointed. She's been nominated by President Trump to serve as the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida.
First woman ever.
First woman
ever.
Okay, and I would like to propose that we have a resolution of support for her going to the. She has to go ahead and be approved by the state, by the Senate.
I think you can get a consensus on that, Mayor. Why don't we just have
so
it prepared for next meeting?
I would like to have that for next meeting to show support, and
Great.
and we're gonna go outreach to the League of Cities to do that, and maybe all the others. Her family lived here, and I believe she lived here, even though the article said from Hialeah, but she lived here.
She
So
did live here, and she was also a member of the Planning and Zoning Board for many years.
yeah,
Board-
and
Board
you
of
know,
Adjustment, too,
it's
right?
a shame
Board
that
of Adjustment.
she couldn't get. She left. She moved on. Might have had her here for Norion's female attorney for the city, but she's more better and bigger, better things.
Yeah, she went on and became a judge, and you got me instead.
Do we need a motion for that, for the
You
resolution?
win some, you lose some. What can I tell you?
I think we can use a consensus that we're going to do it. Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I went out. Go ahead. Anything else? That's it. City manager.
Just one thing, Mayor. I sent you an email today on this. Next Monday, June 18th, our shuttle bus will start a new stop at the EB Hotel. So that's 3 new stops we've put on now, with the additional caveat that at the EB Hotel, residents will be able to stop there and take their shuttle to go to the airport. So that service is going to start Monday, June 18th.
That's cool. That's nice. Good job. Anything else?
No, that's it. Yeah, any events?
No events per se. I don't want to take Councilwoman's thunder away, but it's chat with Councilwoman Mitchell at Starbucks next Wednesday, I think the 15th.
Friday the 15th.
It's for the 15th, from 5:30 to 6:30 at the Starbucks. And then I want to also remind the residents and mayor and council to remind the residents to go ahead and register for that alert Miami Springs through the Everbridge emergency notifications, because it is only registered to landlines, and it is important that you guys have the residents register their cell phones and any other means of contacts that they can on the website.
Anything else? That's it?
That's it.
Councilwoman Mitchell, you go first today.
Just wanted to reiterate what Tammy said with the emergency signing up for it. I did it today, and it's a little, when it says you have to create a password and everything, it might be, we might just want to promote it more to make sure that people understand when they see that it's very easy to do.
What's your password?
I did it. Password is Mayor Bain is the best.
Bain B at Miami Springs.
Mayor Bain is the best. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm getting both sides. And the other thing I just wanted to mention is that I know this Gateway project, you know, we're going back and forth and all, but I know that everyone here on the council really believes that this is something that's going to make our community better, and we're taking small steps. There's so much potential for us to enjoy this area, and I think for anyone who visits Miami Springs and sees the theater and has been here 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago and still sees the same thing, it's indicative of, you know, we need progress. So that's it.
Councilwoman?
I'd just like to bring something to the attention, perhaps something that we can discuss at the next meeting. We have a great opportunity right now with the progress that we've made towards the Gateway, and having our city planner work with people in the community who also have the same expertise. We're in a position to not have to hire outside consultants to look at some of our existing codes, which were written a long, long time ago. Not to rewrite them, but to tighten them to protect us. Because even though we have written into what we're proposing that there's no hotel and all of this, if we have one code that says this is not permitted and the other one that says this is, and what they're requesting falls in the middle, we're going to get caught as a city. So we're in a position to be able to do that right now, and I would like us to have that either for a motion in the next agenda or to move forward with it, but we need to get that done. We're in a good position to do that right now.
Well, go ahead and talk to the attorney and.
I did.
Okay, and yeah, but I mean, talk to him, get it set up what you want the format to be, so we understand where you're going with it.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want on next agenda?
Yes, please.
Okay. That's okay with the rest of the council?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Jaime?
I want to thank William, Tammy, and the entire staff for making this new shuttle and all these extra stops a reality. Because this is an idea I had, and you all supported me, but they're the ones who are doing all the work. To be honest with you, they're the ones who get on the phones and make these things, these beautiful things that happen in our city. It's their hard work, and I want to thank them for making this happen. I think this is a good thing. Now we're going to be linked up to the Metro Rail and also the airport. And thank you both. And also, I just want to let everyone know I'm on vacation. So.
You cutting grass? You want to cut some grass?
That's all.
Councilman Best?
No, Mayor, I don't believe I have anything tonight other than to thank council for their due diligence this evening in terms of some of the issues we covered. I think we did the best we possibly could for the Springs. Thank you all.
Can I add one little
she
thing?
has something to mention.
I want to congratulate Tammy. She's a new grandmother,
Oh,
has
yes.
a gorgeous little granddaughter.
Yes.
I was going to do that.
I can't read your mind.
See, that's wrong.
No.
I saw the pictures a little while ago.
Adorable.
The baby looks just like me. But anyway, I had a real nice experience this past week. The Chamber of Commerce of Miami Springs is trying to restart.
Yeah, so
the newspaper man was there. I hope he recorded everything the right way, but it was really nice. There was 35 or so people showed up. A lot of momentum. They're getting help from the Medley Chamber, and they're trying to make it to where Medley, Miami Springs, Virginia Gardens, so that they'll have a little more pull as far as being together. And they're doing the job with a couple of our people from the Springs to go ahead and have a River Cities chamber that we're together to have a little more pull. And it was, what was more exciting about it was so many people showed up, and it seemed like they're going to move forward and start a chamber that maybe needs to be done here for our residents and the business owners. I thought it was a cool deal, don't you think, Tom? It was good, huh? This meeting's adjourned.